Hi, I'm Giles, the Technical Director of Havilah Resources. And today I'd like to give you a brief run through of the technical review that I gave at the AGM on the 18th of December. 2024 was another busy and very productive year, and we managed to achieve many of our stated objectives. For our Mutooroo project located near Radium Hill, we commenced an association with JXAM Advanced Metals Corporation of Japan. We divested many of our palaeochannel and other non-core uranium assets to a couple of ASX-listed junior companies. We actively engaged with a number of parties on the Kalkaroo project sale. And in the meantime, there were some really good benchmark valuations provided by two recent undeveloped copper-gold project transactions, which I'll mention in a minute. And we had good exploration success, not only around Mutooroo, but also near Kalkaroo, Croziers, Burksgate, Uranella. First of all, the Kalkaroo sale process. And during 2024, we engaged with a number of very capable and interested parties. And the conclusions that we've come to is that none of these companies had any issues with our resource estimations, the metal, or the exploration upside. Sometimes there was a mismatch in timing in that the companies concerned were too busy or preoccupied with other acquisitions or transactions themselves. Some were not willing to accept Havilah's financial terms. They'd rather have a joint venture rather than outright sale. But in general, we found that there was quite a reluctance to take on the capital and construction risk of a new copper-gold development project in Australia. And the truth is, Havilah was possibly handicapped to some extent by not having an up-to-date pre-feasibility study, which of course was the original objective of the Oz Minerals Agreement. But at this time, we're still engaged with several very interested parties who are continuing with their own internal due diligence work. In the meantime, though, Kalkaroo remains very compelling, more compelling than ever, we would say. And this is based on the recent sales of a couple of comparable undeveloped open pit copper gold projects, and that tells you that there is significant demand for such projects. And notably, the three examples we think are most comparable to Havilah for various reasons have all been sold to overseas parties, and these sales give us a very good benchmark valuation, we think, for the Kalkaroo project. And in particular, just looking at the projects, Copper Mountain sold the EVA copper gold project in North Queensland to Harmony Gold, who are moving ahead with updating the feasibility and planning to develop that. That was sold for $343 million. Very close to home, Rex Minerals was the subject of a successful takeover bid by a large Indonesian group, and the company was sold for almost $400 million. And most recently, the Winu project, where Rio Tinto and Sumitomo signed a term sheet, and under that, Sumitomo planned to buy 30% interest in Winu for 614 million Australian dollars, which puts a value on that project of greater than 2 billion. Now we think, and we're a little bit biased of course, but Kalkaroo has a few advantages over some of these projects in its logistics, its multi-commodity status. In fact, we've got a granted ML native title agreement very near Broken Hill, potential renewable energy sources, and so it goes on. But the key point is that Kalkaroo is comparable with these projects, and really it's the only comparable deposit, copper-gold deposit in Australia that has a PFS that remains remains 100% owned by an ASX-listed junior resource company, namely Havilah. And to demonstrate that point, that Kalkaroo compares favourably with its peers, I've just put together these charts here. Now this is a long section again, it's a cut through the length of the ore body rather than across it. Kalkaroo is a very long deposit, 3.5 kilometres long, so this is the surface distance. This is the depth going down here. And this is the basis of the Kalkaroo resource as we've defined it in the 2019 PFS study. And that above that contains 223 million tonnes of sulfide resource at 0.76% copper equivalent grade, not including over 20 million tonnes of oxide resource sitting right on the top. So you can see that the Kalkaroo resource goes down to 500 metres, but a lot of it's open pretty well all the way along here, and further drilling could no doubt extend it. So again, going back to that 2019 PFS, we defined an open pit here with an ore reserve, 100 million tonnes at 0.81% copper equivalent. And that went down to mostly around 200 metres below surface, got down to 250 metres in part. And that took pretty well all the measured and a little bit of indicated resource. You can see there's a lot of resource, Kalkaroo resource still sitting in here, which is not in this open pit. Now turning to Rex Minerals, Hillside deposit, which was recently sold. This is the resource, the base of the resource taken from Rex Minerals 2024 annual report. It contains 337 million tonnes at 0.56% copper, 0.14 gram per tonne gold, and you can see it's quite a bit deeper. It goes down to 700 odd metres, or 800 actually, quite a bit deeper than the Kalkaroo resource. And on that resource they have defined a stage 1 and 2 open pit, which contains 186 million tonnes of 0.53% copper and 0.14 gram per tonne gold, and that takes a large part of the resource. And you can see that it goes down another good 200 odd metres, almost double the depth of the Kalkaroo PFS open pit. And then finally, for comparison purpose, the Winu pit. Now this is Rio's Winu starter open pit. It's taken from plans and cross sections, so it is diagrammatic. It may not be accurate in detail, but the key point is that you can see from their cross sections that their starter pit goes down to almost 500 metres to capture a significant Winu resource, and within that pit they encapsulate 150 million tonnes of 0.79% copper equivalent grade. Now that is not an ore reserve, unlike Kalkaroo. It's actually based on indicated and inferred resources at a copper equivalent cut-off grade of 0.45%. So you can see that the copper equivalent grades for Winu and Kalkaroo within the pit are quite similar, taking into account the gold credit. Rex Minerals is probably just slightly lower, but again comparable. Now the key point, takeaway point out of this exercise is to show that firstly the pits that are designed by Rio and also Rex Minerals go considerably deeper than the Kalkaroo pit, and if we were to re-optimise the Kalkaroo open pit with nearer current copper and gold prices, it too would go down to, no doubt, go down to similar depths. And you can see that we would take in all of this potential resource sitting in here, and we could well double this this number here and end up with something very comparable, or maybe more even than what's in this Winu starter pit and even the Rex stages 1 and 2 pit. Also, the Kalkaroo resource, as I mentioned, is open at depth, so if we did more drilling down in this area here, we could no doubt take the Kalkaroo resource much deeper. And as I mentioned, if we re-optimised our pit, we could certainly take it down to these depths and we would end up with probably very similar tonnages. So in all respects, Kalkaroo compares very favourably with its peers in terms of potential open pittable resources and also in the copper equivalent grade. Details are here and also in a couple of appendices. I guess one additional point to note is that Havilah has probably spent about a bit over 20 million of its own money in getting to this stage at Kalkaroo. Whereas Rio have spent 674 million on Winu to get to the stage they have. They don't have an ore reserve and they don't have a completed PFS at this stage. But they've been able to sell a 30% interest, which is quite an achievement. Turning to our other advanced copper cobalt gold project, Mutooroo. As mentioned, JX Advanced Metals have been funding a $3 million study program there, and that includes drilling and metallurgical studies. And since commencement, we've drilled over 5,500 metres, including reverse circulation pre-collar drill holes and then drilling rig and then diamond tail extensions using a contracted drilling rig. And that is just wound up as we speak, being the end of the year. JX Advanced Metals are a large non-ferrous metals enterprise. They actually mine copper to secure their supply, also have a big recycling business. It goes to their refinery and smelting capacity of about 450,000 tonne per annum, which produces all sorts of products which are sold, which end up in things we use every day of the week. And they are very keen to invest in mining operations in order to secure their primary sources of copper and other metals. So Mutooroo has a lot of upside, and these sections are very illustrative of why that's the case. And if you've looked at any of our previous Mutooroo announcements, you'll see that I always include this picture. Now, it's a long section, again, like the one we showed for Kalkaroo. It's actually along the length of the ore body. It's not cutting across it, it's along it. And it's highly instructive because it shows where existing resources are, showed by these hash zones, measured, indicated, and inferred. A conceptual open pit down to about 130 metres. Now, our drilling with JX, it was funded by them, initially was inside the existing resource, these yellow stars here, and that was to obtain metallurgical sample. That was done early on. The sample's now at the lab, and that metallurgical test work's ongoing. Then after that, we drilled towards the bottom of the resource, or the measured resource, but we also importantly drilled out here at the northern end because we were keen to try and see if we could extend the resource at shallow depth out here, which would allow us to design an extended open pit. So most of our recent drill holes have been in this black dashed area here. And we've achieved some really good results there on this particular section here. We have a whole series of holes getting progressively deeper, and so far our deepest hole here, 21 metres at 1.6% copper, 0.18 cobalt, 0.31 gold. That's from 122 metres, so it's still within open pittable depths. There's a very nice intersection which is increasing this grade thickness trend as we go deeper. It's also very significant because at depth here we have a large airborne electromagnetic anomaly, which is probably indicating a conductive sulfide zone at depth. And we're very keen to drill down in here because there's possibility that we might be able to extend the underground resource as well. But in the meantime, we've been busily likely extending this resource, which will allow us to extend our open pit. And going back to the regional exploration around Kalkaroo, we've been pretty busy drilling most of the year on various prospects, Berksgate, Uranella Dome, Croziers most recently. This is an aeromagnetic image, no outcrop out here, so this gives us an idea of what's happening underneath the soil cover. Kalkaroo sits here, 10, 20, 30 kilometre distance. And all these various prospects all have potentially ore-grade intercepts of copper, gold, and various other critical minerals, and all been reported to ASX, and you can certainly look at them at your leisure if you wish to know more. But the next few slides, I'll give you an idea of our exploration rationale and the sort of results we've got from particularly this prospect here, Uranella Dome, and also the Berksgate prospect. So keep those two in mind. We'll have a look at first the Uranella Dome. Fairly blank slate. Quite a lot of drill holes up here from BHP, shallow air core holes down here. This is the aeromagnetic image showing the dome beautifully represented there. This is the footwall contact, which is magnetic, and the mineralised zone is just outboard of that, essentially non-magnetic. I mean, it's the dome, footwall of it. Just other views, minus some magnetics. And then this is where the exploration story gets really interesting, because back in 2014 we had a joint venture with MMG. They drilled a lot of holes out here, got quite low grade, but always present primary mineralisation. But they hit one bonanza hole here of almost 10 metres of 4.5 copper over a gram gold. BHP earlier, many years earlier, also got a got a bonanza hit of gold up here in the supergene zone. And so this supergene zone sits above the primary mineralisation. It's actually weathered rock. It's where the copper and the gold have migrated down, become enriched. So what we did was, because the land surface, the land out there, has been tectonically stable for the last 50 odd million years, it's hardly tilted or varied or gone up and down, we're able to draw where we thought this supergene zone might be, and that's basically where the old water table levels were. Now, we would love to have tested this zone nearby to this existing hole, but we couldn't because we didn't have any cleared holes there. But we did have some heritage clearance over some drill holes here on the west side. So we came out here and drilled a few holes, and lo and behold, we got our own bonanza intersection here of 8 metres of over 6% copper, almost 3 grams gold. And that was in this supergene enriched zone. So we were very pleased about that. And this is the theory behind it. Basically, the primary mineralised zone is just dipping down very shallowly, maybe 10, 20 degrees. Generally, depth is too low a grade to be economic. But what's happened, the metals have leached out of the rock, copper and the gold, migrated down to hit the old water table, reducing zone, and there they've redeposited. And that forms this what we call supergene enriched zone, sitting above the primary sulfides. Now, it's quite a restricted zone, probably only 50 metres vertically and no more than 100, 120 metres laterally. So you have to put this hole in exactly the right spot. And considering this grid here is 2 by 2 kilometres, one has to be very careful. I beg your pardon, it's 5 by 5 kilometres. You have to be very careful where you put the hole. There's a lot of wide open spaces out there. And so this hole 10 we got in the right spot, went through the predicted zone and got our bonanza intersection. If you drill higher up, all the materials leach, copper and gold's leached, you're in the footwall, so you've really got no hope of finding ore grade. If you drill out here and you drill too shallow, again, you're outside this enriched bonanza zone. Again, no hope. So you have to be very specific in drilling inside this tram line. And if you look at the potential target zone, it's huge target zone running all around this dome, just dipping off the dome in this area here. So this red area here. So we're faced with a good exploration problem, I guess. We've got 20 kilometres or more than 20 kilometres of strike around the dome to explore for this high-grade supergene mineralisation. But where do you start? It would take hundreds of holes to even drill a part of this. So this is a major exploration challenge for us. We think it has very, very good potential to find this high-grade, potentially economic supergene-rich copper gold. The challenge is how do we manage it? And this might be a project that we could joint venture to a major. Certainly got the scale and size to interest a major. Burksgate prospect, I guess, is even more blank slate. Basically a few shallow air core holes with a few copper kicks. But interestingly out here, again, in our MMG joint venture back in 2012-2014, they were drilling on a magnetic anomaly out here. And they got 11 metres of 0.84 copper, 0.64 gold, and quite significantly high moly. And that was on a small magnetic anomaly. They drilled other magnetic anomalies they were different rock types, but this particular mag anomaly was a BIF, banded iron formation, and had the copper gold in it. So what do you do? Not a scrap of outcrop, nice magnetics. So we reconstructed the geology as best we understood it from the aeromagnetics and from our drilling. This zone in here is a big anticline upfold, with the axis running through here, and then we know out here at this Burksgate prospect it's part of a big syncline, a downfold. So we have a downfold, upfold. So we thought about this, where should we drill? There's a big fault runs up here, which just cuts things off. So we decided to take our RC rig up there and drill some shallow RC holes where we thought this might come up on the eastern limb of this syncline. And this distance here, this is a 2 kilometre grid, so we're looking at 2.5 kilometres between here and here. So we drilled some holes and see if we could get similar mineralisation. And sure enough, this hole here, and in the one to the north, we got quite significant hits of copper, plus gold, plus this moly, plus the very distinctive geochemical signatures of uranium and vanadium, which are associated with this original hit here. So I think in our mind, we've virtually proven that this strata-bound horizon probably is the same on this side as here, in which case, if that's true, then it probably goes all the way through underneath this big syncline. So that was quite a breakthrough in our exploration, based on our reasoning, a success you could say. Up next though, of course, is always the explorer's question. Well, this area here, this syncline, has an area of about 8 to 10 square kilometres, so it's a huge area. And if we're right, if this strata-bound horizon continues all the way through here, you're looking at a huge potential target. Require hundreds of drill holes to drill out a resource here, but very attractive at these sort of levels of copper, gold and moly, plus the critical metals. After that, where would you drill? Well, we've got this big anticline here, and so what is on both sides of this syncline also folds around the anticline. We can see that on the aeromagnetics. So this is where we've drilled. This is the syncline, this is the anticline, and this is the prospective horizon sort of running all the way around here, we think, although we haven't drilled it all and possibly faulted up here. We've got about 20 or 30 kilometres of strike. Again, a huge scale, strata-bound mineralisation, and require hundreds of drill holes to drill it out and do justice. And again, it's a big scale project suited to a major company, and maybe that's the way we'll be looking in 2025, get someone to help us. Changing the subject completely to uranium exploration. Now it so happens that our tenements, particularly in the Kalkaroo area, are highly prospective for uranium, particularly palaeochannel uranium, because we're in a tier 1 uranium province with the Beverley 4 Mile camp up here and Honeymoon camp down here, operated by Boss Energy, our neighbours. So to realise value from this non-core uranium asset, Havilah entered into earn-in agreements with 2 companies, Koba Resources and Heavier Earths. And Koba have been busy during the year doing a lot of drilling up here around Oban, extending that resource and looking at other outlying prospects with some considerable success. They've just been drilling down here, just finished drilling down here at Mount John, just north of the Honeymoon deposit on the Uramba palaeochannel. We also came to arrangement with a joint venture with Heavier Earths on the Radium Hill project, which surrounds but does not include the old Radium Hill mine. Significant palaeochannels, Billaroo just downstream from Gould's Dam deposit with Boss Energy, Namba palaeochannel with lots of uranium hits, and then the Prospect Hill project, which is analogous, we think, to the Beverley 4 Mile camp. So in both cases, Havilah retains a 20% free carried interest in any discovery until completion of a feasibility study. And in the meantime, we have good upside via our shareholdings, options, etc. in both of those junior companies. And of course, the exploration expenditure that's carried out by both Koba and Heavier Earths contributes to our exploration expenditure commitments on our tenements. Now, Havilah retains full ownership of its very promising hard rock uranium prospect that we discovered at the Johnson Dam prospect just south of Kalkaroo. Cautionary statements there. Remember, there are forward-looking statements supporting all reserve mineral resources. Some supporting information for a couple of the slides there where we do comparisons. And that's the end of the 2024 technical review for your interest. And as it's the end of the year, we wish you all a very relaxing and peaceful Christmas and good health and prosperity in 2025. And we look forward to joining you again in 2025. In the meantime, we hope you have a very relaxing holiday break. All the best until we talk again.